Today we're incredibly fortunate to have the very, very busy Martin Reeves, the Chief Exec of Oxfordshire County Council, where he has led the authority for the last 18 months. Prior to that, he was Chief Exec at Coventry City Council for 14 years. He's an economist and one of the foremost thinkers on the role of place in the economy and society. He has been described as many things. The ones I'll use are energetic, insightful, inspirational, and a person who says it as it is. So to convince you why heaven really is a place on earth, will you please give a warm welcome to the indomitable and always illuminating Dr. Martin Reeves.
Well, that's a nice introduction. Thanks for that. How is everyone? Are we good? Thumbs up? In good shape. Right. It's lovely to see you. Thanks for asking me. It's really important that so many of us are together talking about something as important as this. So what I thought I might do, I think we've got 40 minutes for the session. So we're going to speak for about 20 minutes. There's 4 opportunities within that to get a bit of a poll question response from you on Slido. That's good because it makes it interactive. You don't have to listen to me all the time. Plus, it gives me some kind of structure. Because anyone's been sad enough to listen to me before, I have no idea what I'm going to say. So the fact that we've got 4 points, it gives me some kind of sense of covering the following for you. A bit of context, because I think that's everything. Then we'll have a question. Then I'm going to talk about local government and public services as a convener, but not the complete driver of all of this work. Then I'm going to talk about the rationale why there's a compelling need for us to think about our places in a fundamentally different way. And then finally, fourthly, I'm going to talk about our leadership, because every single person in this room is a leader. And a bit of a clue, I don't care really hierarchically where you are in an organisation, what your position is, we're all leaders of our places. So they're the 4 things I was going to do and just give you a sense of my views, my experience of that. And then I think we're going to get into the second 20 minutes will be just an opportunity for you to chuck anything you want at myself, and John will convene that. So I think that will work. That's what I plan to do. Is that all right? I'm going to do it that way because that's the only plan I've got, right? So and I'm going to go all over the place, but I'm going to avoid that light because it is major migraine inducing if I get anywhere near that into the screen. So if I disappear off the stage in agony, it's because I've got in the front of that. Look, just thanks for the introduction, John. It's always a bit embarrassing, isn't it, when we hear about, because all of you people in this room have got amazing backgrounds, otherwise you wouldn't be here. But I just do think, before I talk about context, just a little bit about whether I've got any credibility at all, and you'll be the judge of whether it's any use me giving you some inputs and thoughts. I'm a recovering academic. Yes, that's always amusing for academics and others, but so I guess my brain always works in kind of an analytical way, but I've been literally privileged to be, and I use that word really, really advisedly, 25 years in local government, and luckily, most of that as a chief executive and a senior director. So I feel like I've got that nice combination. Much more importantly than any of that is I am a major, major fan, unashamedly, of the only thing that matters is our places. And I've already had conversations with people like that. Big up to Bolton. Where's Bolton? You know, but there's just, every place in this country is just amazing. So hopefully credibility of where I come from, my experience of working in pretty large organisations, including establishing one of the largest combined authorities in the country in the West Midlands and working with the mayor, know a little bit about that. But much more importantly, I've always believed that actually place is everything. Organisations, yeah, interesting, but it's not that material. The place is what's unique. And so hopefully I can share some of those views. And, you know, I've done it in Coventry with a place story with Thinking Place that made, I think, a big difference to the confidence of our place, and Warwickshire and the wider West Midlands. I've done it in Oxfordshire very recently when we've launched it. And I've been lucky enough to be asked, not just from Thinking Place, but to go around the country and just speak to places that want to set up their own view of their great place and learn from others. So, and I will always give my time to that because I think it's really, really important. So that's a bit about me. You can decide after I've spoken, A, whether you'll invite me back, John, again, and whether it's been any use. So context. Context is everything. So I'm going to start getting a bit kind of freestyle. So for me, the key here is on our places and whether really heaven is a place on earth, everything is driven by the operating context we're in. I just want us to think a little bit about what I think is an incredibly febrile but also an incredibly potentially exciting environment that we're all operating at the moment. And think about that from a global perspective, and I'm making no comments, genuinely no comments, only in the break, around what's happened across the Atlantic and the new leader of the free world, renewed leader of the free world. You'll make your own views about that. But think about globally all of the disconnection that's going on with people being displaced from their homes as a result of either climate, war, famine, loss of food security. Think about all that's happening. And this is incredibly febrile, scary for individuals on a global scale. And then you work all of that one through to where we are as a country with, significant challenges that we had around the global crisis on finance, which then impacted us in austerity terms, cost of living, where individuals, families still struggling massively with not just energy costs, but a raft of other real challenges on their day-to-day living. You say, why is he going there? This is really important because our places are a collection of amazing people and assets that are trying to live their lives within that context. And we can only amplify our great places by respecting and understanding the very situation that we're finding ourselves in every single day. And of course, our places are unique, but the environment globally that we're trying to operate in is something that we're all trying to deal with. So I just wanted to sort of start by giving a sense of where I think the big context shifts are and how we actually try and operate within it. But if you take nothing else away, and you can agree whether I've hyperbolized that a little bit too much about exaggerating just how challenging it is, but just take this because I think it's so important to the conversations today. My view, my thesis, if you like, a bit arrogant, but a view of what I think has happened and will continue to happen is this thing about disconnection. So just bear with me on this one, just 1 minute on this, because I think it's really, really key to challenge me and think about it. My view on all the stuff I just banged on about, including whatever people's view was of the European Union and the referendum, stick with me on this, I never believed it was necessary, whilst it was a binary vote about either remaining or leaving, of course it was actually about swathes of people feeling disconnected with politics, with power, and with where decisions were made, which, to my point, felt a million miles away from how they were living their lives every single day, often quite challenging lives, right? So it's about disconnection, disaffection, less so disenfranchisement. You could argue a bit about that. So, well, why is that important? Because then if you follow it through with all the other turbulence and changes, look at levels of trust now within the political establishments. I've got 2 teenage daughters. You speak to them, they're over kind of big institutions and politics. Youngsters now just thinking, the climate, what have you done with that? You've left us a terrible legacy. There's no trust and inspiration in our leaders at different levels. It's not doom and gloom, by the way. It's just acknowledging it. And at the heart of all of this is our desire as individuals, places, communities, families, to feel connected with each other. Look what happened on the first Slido poll. Straight away, nothing about, I want to find out today about models for how we lead our places. It was all about collaboration, networking, relationships, the feel type stuff. So all I'm saying about context around place shaping, making, and thinking about how we put our place up there on a local, regional, national, international scale is we've got to understand that there is a lot going on at the moment. And I talk about it being almost like a pinball machine. It's like ricochet effect and collateral damage because things are moving. Excuse me, just when you think things have stabilised at the moment, politics, social, environmental, economic, financial, budgets, all moving again. And if we don't understand that context, and if we, let's say, deny it, but think it's peripheral, all of us in this room are going to struggle to really get to the sense of identity of our place and what it is to be able to lift ourselves up and amplify that place. Does that make sense? People roughly agree with that or not? Let's just do a quick poll. First one, let's see if this kind of works. So I might have led you into this, but do you think the current context we are working in makes it more or less important to create that notion of a compelling, coherent place narrative? I can't make sure you're all using Slido. Hopefully that's nice and clear. Everyone got it? So I probably led you. sorry, jury, but I did lead you. When we get into Q&A, I'd be really interested through John to think about, but what is your particular context? And has that been something you've taken into account, thinking about your own place narrative, your own place-led approach in your area? But I do urge you to think about this. Why did I start there? And you might think, it's really bizarre to have gone quite big, thinking about it before we get into detail about how we actually rationalise and get into place-shaping type activity. Because I see too many places, well-meaning places, jump straight into wanting to do this. Because others have done it, therefore there's a race to do it too. I would urge you all just to reflect and think about the context that we're all operating in, and particularly your place. And I think that might help you fast track when you then start getting into the second bit, which is really about how does all this work, and certainly the role of local government and public services in doing this. So let's think about, most of you, I've looked at the list in the room, most of you, not all of you, there's some great partners from other areas, are of local government, working in and around place type boards. That's pretty much right. Just put your hand up if you're kind of local government or working sort of closely within a place board type environment within local government. So pretty much that's the family. There's a number of others here. So I'm going to spend the second bit, before we then get to another break on a poll, just talking about the notion of convening and local government's role in all of this stuff that we're talking about today. There's absolutely no doubt that not just in law, and whilst local government, right, for all of us who care deeply about it, and everyone does in this room, or you wouldn't be here, whilst it's complex local government, right, get it, doesn't matter what structure and shape we are, we deliver hundreds of services, very complex, high demand services. Every single day there's hundreds of thousands of transactions. In law, it's pretty simple, actually. Local government exists for only one reason, and that's to improve the economic, social, environmental, economic well-being of the people that live in our place. Place, get that? In law, place. What is that important? Because actually that's relevant to us, because every single place is different. So when you go to work every single day and say, it's too difficult, I don't understand how I can deliver all these services, there's not enough money, all of which is true, context is terrible. Just remember, the only reason we come to work is to lift our people's lives, particularly those that are most vulnerable in our places. So in that spirit, there is absolutely no way that local government can surrogate its responsibilities to lead the place-type conversations. There's a democratic mandate to do it. There is often a classic standoff where people look at each other because they care deeply about the place, and they'll look at local authorities and look at each other, and you just don't get started. So in that spirit, I'm not saying that local government should not stimulate these conversations, and most of you in this room would have done it. Lead the roles often in bringing people together, convening it, championing it, corralling it, shouting loud initially. But this is the point which I think we all miss, and it's dangerous if we do this. We've all got in local government, and certainly those that aren't local government in the room, I think will understand this, to get the balance right with our politicians, with officer colleagues, to actually stimulate that excitement, that energy of, look, we've got to do something different here to get our place up there where it needs to be, with knowing when others are better placed then to project that, continue to lead it. More of that in a minute. This is really important. I've seen too many places where there has been a holding on for far too long. I talked to John and Sarah about the steering wheel in the car still remains held by the local authority or local authorities in a place. That's wrong. You can't get out of the car to keep the analogy going. It's important that we're part of it, but you get into the back seat. Just hold it. It's really important. And that is not to say local authorities shouldn't care. There's not enough money. We don't do it. You've got to start stimulating the conditions by which, whose place is it anyway? And the place is about those amazing communities, stakeholders, people that, guess what, are vested in their place. So we've got this humble but really kind of challenging balance as local government to get the conditions right, to care deeply, then to allow others to tell their story and to curate it and to amplify it and to project it and to shout at every single opportunity about the amazing assets in this place. Because without it, it becomes a very, very lonely pursuit. So I do think it's really, really important to think about our role, but our humility of withdrawing slightly to allow others to fill that space. Does that make sense? It's really important because I've just, as I say, seen too many people really well-meaning that have hung to it. And it just starts to feel, everyone, a bit bloody municipal because local government's amazing, but it's a bit kind of machinery. Do you know what we love in local government? This is like the best clue ever. Anne-Marie and others will agree with this. We love boxes because boxes are really cool because you can put things in boxes and they've got solid lines around them. Places aren't like that. Places are fuzzy. They are really fuzzy. They're awkward. They don't always make sense. People often don't actually have words and language that fits into ours. So that's why it's really important in terms of understanding our context and our place that we don't put boxes around stuff. I'm going to talk about devolution before I finish. If anyone thought that we're dealing with kind of boxes, you wait and see what happens with some fuzzy geographies and some interesting marriages and potentially some divorces over the next few months and years as we think about the map of the UK. People's lives are fundamentally no longer defined by boxes. So, in that spirit of us being there but not being everything, let's go to the second one and ask you the question, who do you think are the most critical partners in your place, in the context I've just talked about, to help shape and then tell your story of your place? Just one word. Yeah, one part. I know there'll be lots. Just interested to see if there's a consensus. Is this working for anyone struggling? Anyone not being able to get onto Slido? It's not a confessional. I'm just interested if people haven't been able to get their views known. We're all okay. Everyone looks pretty active. Yeah. Buddy up. If someone's struggling, look over their smartphone and help them. It's the way we do stuff in places. So look what we've got then. Not surprisingly, and there's some brilliant people I've met already from sort of private sector here today and are an integral part of it. But look at what's coming out alongside business actually in terms of word clouding on this, community. And I think there's something about why I started from the notion of context and why, whose story is it anyway, whose place is it anyway, and why are we shaping the place for the future. One of the things I also worry about is in our attempt as good people that care deeply about this, that's why you've spent time here, amazing that you've come together, give your professional and personal leadership to this, is that we do this stuff. And you know that point about we're trying to connect with the very people that live in their lives in our places. And I've said to John before, and I've sort of done podcasts in the past talking about, you know, the thing about places and communities is they are defined, yeah, by amazing assets that are well known, but about that bus stop where they had their first kiss. It's really important. Remember anybody here who's moved away from home to create families elsewhere, business, university, college, work, gone overseas, just remind yourself just now, just think about this, of this visceral feel when you get a train back into the place where you were born or you were brought up. Just think about that, because it should evoke all kinds of sounds, smells, images. And you say, where's he going? Because if we're not careful, we get caught up in this kind of incredible, compelling narrative, yeah, cool, but actually what it's really about is these million different connections with our communities, with each other in our places. Just look, even at those places up and down the UK that don't necessarily have the kind of assets coming out of their ears that others do. Just look when you go into those places and you start criticising their place. Just watch what happens. This shield of sense, and you've got to ask yourself, why do they do that? Why is there this incredible defence mechanism for the place and do not have a go at my place? Because there's something so deep, so innate, so kind of human, really, about communities and how they live their lives in their places. They've made choices often to grow and to remain in their places. So I do want to make sure that in our partnerships, we make them as wide and as deep as possible. The private sector, the community voluntary sector, the other statutory partners, those big businesses, medium-sized businesses, supply chain, startups, all really critical. But unless front and centre we've got a sense of this place is made up of these incredible communities, people that are just so powerful, colourful, bring different lived experiences. If we forget that, the whole thing becomes an academic exercise. So that's my only point about that. Right, let's just then think about, if we talked a little bit about context, a bit about local government's role as convener, but not dominating forever, and a wider partnership based on communities. Let's think about the rationale and compelling reason, linked to the context, linked to local government's changing role, devolution, thinking about our place to deliver inclusive economic growth that's better socially connected. I can't think personally of a time when we've got I think we're on a pivot point, is my only way of describing it. I think there are pivot points, sliding doors, I don't know. I don't know which way this country's going. You'll have to have your own views about a mission-led government, and you'll hear about that later on in terms of where Labour is at, and all of us would sign up to missions. We know that economic growth is important to get UK back up, but actually the real truth about all of this is, how do we do it in a way that doesn't allow the same swathes of our places, on all places by the way, to miss out on those massive uplifts as they've done for many, many generations in the past? Because I'm talking to you now as Chief Executive of Oxfordshire County Council, right, as well as someone who's coming along. And let me tell you, in that why would we move forward with a place narrative, this is my place now that has the highest economic output outside of London in the UK, as arguably the best university in the world. Now, this is not arrogance, this is just telling you that's my place. We're changing the world for the better every single day. COVID vaccine, malaria vaccine, quantum, you name it. All places are great, by the way, but this is a reason for mentioning it and compelling reason why are place narratives and place-led approaches so important. That's my place. At the same time, I've got children living literally less than a mile away from those dreaming spires of Oxford who will never get anywhere near those colleges. They are somebody else's dream. And I've been saying they're not dreaming spires, they're a nightmare for those who can't be connected. So you're saying, where are you going, Reeves, with this? It's really important. In terms of compelling reason, how do we think about amplifying our places that actually doesn't talk nationally, internationally about the social challenges that we've got? Because that's not a great way to tell your story. But let me tell you, use the power of your story compellingly, the rationale, to start connecting people into those opportunities. Because otherwise, the only thing that happens is the same section of our places carry on enjoying the benefit of being in those places, and those that don't continue to get disrupted away from the very benefit. So there's something about how we can think. It's not a downside, it's a really important thing that we can do. I'm going to rush through these, I know we'll get some questions. So the notion of place shaping, place leading, place making, some people feel like with some of this work that you'll be doing with Thinking Place and others, is kind of new because of everything that we've talked about, and we'll talk about later on, the context, the shift, putting places on a map, devolution, thinking about how we can gain more from government, get power local to be able to where the decisions are best made, to deliver that social regeneration as well as economic, financial regeneration. It's been around for a long time. The Lyons Review, which is the only fundamental review of local government really in a generation, talked about place shaping and place making. Many, couple of decades or so ago. So actually this is not new. What's new, I think, is the nuance of some of the things we've been speaking about, whose role it is to really deliver this. So one of the things that, we asked a question in a minute about myths. One of the things I think we should maybe get out and just sort is, in that spirit, what is a place-led approach? What is a place narrative and what isn't it? So let's just ask a question now, before I finish my final bit about leadership, about what myth about a place narrative is something that you would like to put in room 101? What's the kind of, myth, urban legend, a kind of reflex about, this is what it is, this is why we're doing it, this is why we're so important. So just one word, just give us a sense of what it really feels, that we just need to just disabuse ourselves of that, so we've got a clarity about what it is and what it isn't. Tagline, fluffy, marketing, logo. Logos are coming up a lot, marketing and branding. I know there's workshops and stuff later, but I think dreamed up by a PR company, there you go. Marketing, vanity projects, into branding, all the things I'd expected to come up. And I know, because you're so embedded in this, otherwise you wouldn't be here, or intrigued about how you might move your places on, that what I hear more than anything else is, it's branding, it's logo, it's marketing material, it's strap lines, it's the ability to really get the right colours imagery out. Now, Peter and colleagues within Think in Place here, working with you and your brilliant colleagues, will do amazing stuff on visual language, on the ability to, whether it be through audio or other approach of collateral, get that message out. Of course, that's important, but it's not the compelling reason, and it's not what it is. So I think the fact that you've already sort of logged in, the fact that this is not about marketing, it's about a sense of how we work every single day together with vested interest in our place to project, often in complex environments, what it is that we are feeling heroic about. And this is the point, our places are so different. Every single one in this room, honestly, you would put your bodies on the line for your places. That's what it is. It's not about marketing, slogans, taglines, and advertising campaigns. This is about literally the deep DNA of your place, which separates you from others. Remember, every single place is different and unique. So I think there's something about us just putting those myths away. And those that aren't on this and don't want to come to where we are, doesn't make them bad people, but often it's because they've got all these myths in their head about what it is, highly expensive marketing campaign. And actually it'll be static, done it once and you're off. But actually this is about dynamic, the way we do things around here with our partners, with our communities. So I think I'd urge all of you to keep putting those things into 101 and educate and help people that just, because it's convenient truth for them just to believe this is a marketing dream and it's just about doing something in advertising terms, because it's easier for them not to do what we're trying to do today, and I'm probably articulating it really badly, but starting a conversation about this is fundamentally different about how places work and about identity and about power and about projection and about amplification. That's hard to think about. So it's better just to put it in a box again, call it marketing, go, well, we can't afford it, or, well, yeah, we've done the marketing, now let's move on. This is hard yards. So let's move to the final bit, and then we'll get into Q&A with John. And this is, I think this is arguably, I think this is the most important thing, actually, and you should think about this today as you go to the workshops and have other inputs from brilliant colleagues. I think this is all about leadership, because this is really, really tough. So let me go right back to where I started. Arguably, if you are in a place that feels like you want to start this journey of endemically understanding the DNA of your place, get it owned bottom up, get the right people around tables and organise themselves in place boards, which many of you are doing. When you've got a steady state, we haven't had much of that for a couple of decades. When you've got a steady state, right, everyone's happy. Communities feel more equal. There's money coming out of our ears from central government, from local government, grants. Remember, it used to be European funding, remember all of that? Something happened to stop all of that. When you're doing it there, it is a lot easier. It's not easy, but it's a lot easier. When you're facing the kind of stuff we are, with multiple challenges on budgets, the very partners that you talked about being critical, voluntary community sector, commercial sector of all sizes, other public sector bodies, local government ourselves, the very communities and families we serve, all going through really challenging kind of pivot points about, oh, where next? And people wanting to knock back the very things that do take time to build because they want short fixes, that's when leadership becomes absolutely essential. That's when you, all of us, have to take a step forward and go, this is the right thing to do. It's not peripheral, it's not pop, it's core to what we are as a place and how we put our place onto a footing, which means everyone will start gaining from this amazing story that we're telling. And I'm afraid I see when the going gets tough, too many people dissipating because it's hard. So yeah, you can get people like Think in Place and others and your own brilliance and talk to people, get the technical toolkits right. What did you do in that place? And what's Anne-Marie done in Torbay? And brilliant stuff there. And what have you done up in Bolton? What have you done down in Chesterfield? All that stuff's cool, and we'll get all that, but there is no substitute for leadership. And that leadership doesn't just come from what I call the usual suspects. People that are lucky enough to have certain positions of power to make things happen at certain points. This is everyone that's got a vested interest in a place to be able to stand up and go, I am not going to take a backward step. This is too important to allow others to do. And I'd leave that with you as a major challenge, which leads me to my final poll. I want to know how confident you are on a scale of 1 to 5. 1 being, if you like, least confident. 5 being uber confident about your own leadership of being able to amplify the power of your own place. Just be honest, be really clear. Just don't overthink it. Just come up with a scale point for me. There's no 5s. Come on, there must be a 5 out there. That's probably not a surprising profile. So hopefully all you can see it. Why is that not a surprising profile? Because guess what? You're in the room. You come to beautiful sunny Chesterfield to be amongst other people that are equally brilliant. So therefore in you is a sense of purpose. Some have been down a journey where you've done this for some time and knocking spots off it. Others, early start. But you've got a sense of you know what you need to do. I would say to you, and I kind of sense this would kind of happen in this profile, just imagine if we had a group of those that aren't in the same mindset as us, but they are vested in their place. Ask them the question, how confident they feel about being able to amplify from their own platforms, their own positions. You will see a fundamentally different profile. So that's back to my point about leadership and context. We've got to get out there and enthuse people. There's no point just enthusing ourselves. It's a lovely echo chamber, which is really nice because we all care about this and we're talking to each other. But how are we going to then inspire the 10,000, the 15,000, the 20,000 people in our places who are not the usual suspects and feel like this is something that's just done in a hotel in Chesterfield? That's the leadership challenge that's in front of us. But let me finish with this and we will, John, get into a Q&A. As I've said, I've seen, as I know a number of colleagues would be in this room, all equally of the same view, and academics and other practitioners. We've seen over the last 25 years, I've certainly been in places, some of the most amazing upsides. Because we have, and people have forgotten this, and I think we forget that at our peril. There's a lot of revisionism that sometimes happens in our world. People don't remember the stuff, but there were times when our places had the highest levels of revenue, dosh, and capital coming into our places at any other point in local government history. So it's tough. It's been tough since 2009. Prior to that, though, there was a lot of significant resource coming in. So we've seen the ups. We've seen probably, in my view, Anne-Marie and other colleagues at the chief exec level have their own views on this, probably some of the worst doldrums of local government and public service financing in places, and families been at their hardest. Back up again, then back down again. But the one thing that has not changed through all of that time, if you think about it, is the amazing uniqueness of our places, our ability to have resilience against that, our ability to top out when we know we're in good shape and we're on top of our game. And that what's remained consistent throughout is that amazing sense of the hero of the place, which I'll leave you with this finally, because I think about this a lot, and I think all of us should reflect on this. Look what happened through the pandemic. So this goes right back to my earliest point, if you can remember that 5 hours ago, when I talked about the notion of context, connection, disconnection. Look what happened through the pandemic. When the disconnection of all of us, because of social isolation and the necessary guidance, some would say, others would say, not required in the way they did, wherever your view, the fact that we saw pulling away from our networks, our family, our loved ones. But look what happened when we were able to ease and go, look what happened. The hero, not just the place, hyper place, the park bench, maybe the bus shelter again, maybe the little park, maybe just being able to get out and reconnect with places that people had never even gone and walked around before or been part of. Just remember, just think about that. So the deepest, darkest moments for the UK through that pandemic, once eased out, the hero was the very assets that we had in our places that I think for very, very many years we've probably taken for granted. So look, I think it's brilliant you've all come together. I hope some of that gives a sense of context for the other much more detailed thoughts and probably much more articulated views later. But I'm glad you're here. The final thing I would say, because you're so energised, I can just tell from the room outside and looking at you now, you want this to be great for your places and share with others. Just remember, for every one of you, there's probably 100 or 1,000 that are far from convinced. Your job's what are you going to do about it? Because talking to each other is lovely cheerleading, but it doesn't really endemically change this place that we want to sell, whoever your place, on a local, regional, national, international level. So thanks very much.
Well, what a start to the day. I hope you've been asking questions through Slido. If you haven't, you've got the chance to do now, because you can put him on the spot and you can disagree, because I think there was certainly plenty of provocation, as there always is, in terms of what Martin had to say. So, ask away. While we wait to see what happens there, I guess, Martin, you've done this, as you've said, in Coventry and Warwickshire for a long time, in Oxfordshire more recently. What are the big highs that have come out of doing it, and what have the big frustrations been?
I think the biggest highs, from my experience and talking to some places in this room, sort of elsewhere, John, in the past, is when you unveil, I think it's probably the right phrase, unravel sometimes, assets as part of your story of your place that either you'd forgotten, never knew about, or had never had the chance to be, amplified and out in the open. And it could be really small, discrete things, or it could often be quite big things. I didn't realise that was in my place, or I didn't realise that started here. That's really illuminating. It's kind of like, wow, I didn't realise that was literally in my place, and it was in clear and present sight, and yet I didn't know about it. So I think that's the high side. What was the other bit? But to the downsides. Honestly, we're amongst friends, aren't we? I think it's the debilitating effect of cynics and skeptics, because it's why I banged on about leadership. If there's nothing more important than the place we all choose to live in, to work in, to play in, and you get people that it doesn't matter what you say to them, and they're actually vested in our place. And do you know what? A number of them done very well out of our places for different reasons. You just know you're not going to move them. And I've got a natural kind of style, I think, of saying, well, if there's a compelling reason to shift and to move and to change, and there's so many brilliant people that want to do it, why is it that some won't move and they're influential? And I think that hurts, John, if I'm honest. And experience teaches me that you should always go to where the energy is. You should always go to what is often 80% of go-to people and not overworry about 20%. But I get drawn to the unfairness of people that can act, can make a difference. I don't just mean with resources. I mean in putting their shoulder to the wheel of their place. And they decide that everything is just shrugging shoulders. Maybe because they're perpetuating myths about it's just another expensive marketing campaign with another logo that will go in a year's time, or what's our place got to shout about? That hurts me. I can't be any more honest. I find it devastating that particularly those, as I say, that are vested in the place. And that's hard, isn't it? For all of us.
Frustrating. A good one there. Given the reduction in local authority funds, why do you feel they're often so resistant about getting in the back seat rather than trying to sit firmly gripped on the wheel?
It's a really good question. Again, we're amongst friends, aren't we? So you've heard me say this before, so I'm going to say it again. There's something that we've got to be honest about in certainly local government leadership, both at political level and an officer level. And I know there's a number of officer colleagues in the room. I'm not sure we've got any politicians. I know we've got an ex-politician coming later. It's about power. I'm not going to be careful how I say this. Look, the professional class in this country, of which local government was built on professional expertise, right? Unfortunately, what's happened over decades and decades at officer level, and I'll come to politicians in a minute because it's a slightly different power issue. We think as officers, we've got loads of ologies, we've got loads of people that work for us, we've got big budgets, therefore we should know all the answers. So the power, how many times have you as a professional, and certainly talking to chief execs, heard a conversation who goes, I don't know, I don't know what to do here, but there's lots of people in my place that could help me with this. How many times do you hear that vulnerability? Because professionals think that the answer is about, we're all knowing. Nonsense. That was never the truth, ever, even when we were doing really well. With all the complexities, everything that I said, even if you only believe half of it, about lives are difficult, we've got major opportunities to change, we need to grasp. So power for professionals in places mean often officers hold on, right, when they should let go. And it's very convenient for officers to blame politicians, go, oh, well, they're all over it still. But no. Professionals, and I'll put my hand up, I'm sure I do at times, want a grip because it's power, control, and ownership. Politicians, different power dynamic. Because the thing about politicians, and we've got some amazing politicians locally, all of your places, you've got some politicians who are leading locally that are incredible. And they knock some of the national politicians off stage because their integrity, their brilliance, their connection with local place is inspiring, right? But think about this. They are, by definition, returned or not, within often a 4-year cycle. So therefore, it's really important for us to understand the psyche of control, power, and ownership. The best politicians are the ones that understand that letting go, a bit like professionals, to others in a place, to tell that story, to amplify it, because it's their story too, are ones that get more by letting go, not less. That's true, but it's bloody hard, isn't it, when you're a politician or a professional who wants to hold on. So that's a bit over-academic-y, but it's the truth. I've seen it play out. And so my leadership bit to all of you was knowing that humility, when to let go, when to get into the back seat, but also it's really hard. Let's support each other. People often, great people in places, think the only way anything's going to get done is by them doing it and by them ensuring that they've got some assurance and control. We are hardwired to have a box. 20 things need to be done, I'm going to control that. The fuzzy thing is to let go. That would be my argument. It's not because we're bad people and politicians are bad people. I just think it's the hard wiring, John.
Difference between doing all this in a city and a county is the one?
I'll come back to my point that every single place is unique. So if you think about, and we didn't get a chance, and let's grab it over lunch if people are interested and we'll talk about it, but devolution, mission-led government, potentially local government reorganisation for two-tier areas, big public service reform, health, care, all that stuff is going to dominate, I think, our discussions over the first half of this Parliament, right? So all of that is kind of playing out. But I don't differentiate, I never have done, generally. I've been lucky enough to be a local authority chief exec and director in very, very small districts, doing amazing stuff, amazing places, that market towns that, oh my word, that their history, their provenance, the stories they told about, when the horse and carriages used to go through, and it's not folklore, it's just how it was built, and then why that is right the way up to, I've been lucky enough to lead some of the biggest cities in the country, and now one of the biggest economically potent counties. There's no difference, because while scale's different, this is a devolution argument, of course you get different issues about trying to do a place-led approach for a big county that takes you 2 hours to get from one bit to the other, as opposed to in Coventry, an incredibly big city, but one that you could get to city limits, outer limits within 15 minutes. Of course, there's a practical difference to how you can convene everyone, how you can actually bring everyone together to compellingly tell your story. But actually, I don't differentiate, John, because I think those assets, and I think it's dangerous for us to go, well, how can that place have a real compelling story that cuts through, as I say, locally, regionally, nationally, internationally, because they're quite small. They don't have an international renowned university. They don't have a global OEM, global company that's HQ'd. Nonsense. You just have to amplify slightly different according to those places. Another thing I would say is all the stakeholders are the same. They might feel and look a bit different, but they're same in the sense of we've all got communities, we've all got community and voluntary sector, we've all got commercial sector, we've all got public agencies, we've all got. So actually it's just about thinking about that heroic bit about the place. And one of the things I know we've spoken about for years and years, sometimes that amplification, that kind of asset comes from the most unlikely of places. So no, of course there's practical differences, John, to how you mobilise the story, but I don't see any difference in terms of the rationale for doing it, the context, and the importance for all of our places, small, medium, and mega.
Okay. Unfortunately, we've run out of time on there, and we could probably, Martin could have the whole morning, and I've looked at some absolutely fantastic questions. Martin will certainly be here as far as lunch, so if you want to grab him, he's always prepared to take on a healthy conversation. So can I just ask you, please, show your thanks in the normal way.